I knew taking on a challenge like this wasn't going to be easy, but didn't realise that I'd be facing life or death situations over and over again.
And the ocean's alive, it moves all the time. It has different moods. It can be quite calm or it can be an absolute monster.
There was a big thump as it hit the boat.
When you hear that they're capsized, you say your prayers, really.
I'm not a praying person, but I started thinking about my family, my two little girls.
I was basically going to tie us all together so that when we drowned, rescue services would be able to recover our bodies. So my mum and dad would have somebody to bury and they would have somewhere to go and grieve.
It was magic that day. I came this way, over the water so blue, silly boy. Then with islands in sight, I stopped for the night. And that's when I met you, silly boy, oh, and that's when I met you.
The countdown's really started now, hasn't it, for the Scilly Boys and their preparations for the mammoth row from New York to the Bishop Rock Lighthouse here in Scilly. And in a few weeks' time, the boat itself will be travelling up to Liverpool, where it'll be carried on the container ship to the Big Apple. So the pressure's now on for Chris Jenkins and the boys over at the Portlow Boatyard to get the boat completely ready for its epic voyage.
I got to a stage, I was the wrong side of 40, and I really felt this was something that it was achievable and really, really exciting thing to do.
We're rowing 3,000 miles from New York, just there, to the Isles of Scilly, which is, we all know, is there. So we've been to the pub, we had a few pints, and myself and Chris both were discussing Atlantic rowing, what a sort of challenge it was. And we were looking for new challenges.
We're heading sort of that way to start off with. We're going with the current rather than against it, and there's also a big ice risk area up around Newfoundland. I'd heard sort of rumours that a few of the lads had been talking about rowing an ocean, and I'd hate to watch 4 lads row over the finish line and not be one of them.
I still keep myself pretty fit. When I was first asked if I'd be interested in doing this challenge, I sort of grasped that the opportunity of both hands is opportunity in a lifetime to just be able to see what your body can do.
Now, as you know, Radio Scilly hopes to broadcast daily reports from the satellite phone the boys will be carrying on board, and you can listen in live on the internet too.
There was really nothing to look at apart from seeing the sky. The first thing we noticed was seabirds. Quite a few of them around to start with. They thinned out a little bit as the days went on. Dolphins nearly every morning used to come along at first light.
The boat was only 29 foot, 2 rowing positions, so you'd have 2 people constantly rowing. The 2 that weren't rowing would be resting, eating, 1 in the forward cabin and 1 in the after cabin. The first couple of days we had really good weather, good visibility. We were making really good miles as well, and it was really good morale-wise.
We never thought, we never considered what was going to happen. It never even crossed our mind.
This boat represents the hopes and dreams of the 4 men who will row her across the Atlantic. It represents, too, the people of these islands and elsewhere who have raised money and have helped in so many other ways. The Scilly Boys will carry not only Chris, Joby, Tim and Wayne, but also the hopes, prayers and very best wishes of their families, friends and everyone on Scilly and beyond. May they have strong arms and brave hearts. Bless her as she begins her journey and in her coming home.
3 cheers for the Scilly Boys! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray!
It takes a long time to get used to rowing 12 hours and 24 hours. The routine, although it worked good, it was really, really hard going.
The worst shift of the whole 24-hour period was what we named the shift of doom, which is a 3-hour shift in the middle of the night.
You're just about getting into your sleep, you've had 2 hours sleep, whatever, then you've woken up, you've got to get out of the hatch, put on some clothes, freezing cold, swap paddles with someone, not quite with it, try not to fall over the side of the boat, sit down, and then you got 3 hours rowing in the dark, can't see anything, cold, thinking, why did I sign up for this? But
because the shift of doom was a bit of a struggle just to stay awake, we rigged up our deck speakers, played a bit of music to keep us going. We were blasting out a bit of Johnny Cash just to keep things lively.
tried to listen to some album a night to help us get through the shift, which Wayne usually selected, so it depended what mood he was into of what we listened to.
Yeah, I really love my sleep. I can just grab sleep whenever I want. If I can sleep standing up pretty much, park benches. I said to Joby, I said, look, I'm gonna have to use the bathroom facilities here. So I got the bucket out, dropped the salopettes, done my business, and next thing I knew, Joby was shouting at me because I'd fallen asleep on the bucket with my trousers down around my ankles.
We didn't have very much time to relax in New York. The boat was shipped from Liverpool in a container, and by the time it got to us in New York, it was quite late. The food that we'd ordered up had not arrived, so we had to reorder that. And by the time we got everything, we were working almost day and night.
I've been involved with ocean rowing for nearly 15 years now. I've rowed an ocean myself. A couple of years ago, I was in Scilly's in the Mermaid and bumped into Chris. Started talking about ocean rowing and the fact that we were organising a challenge from New York back to Scilly's. And immediately Chris's eyes like lit up because the prospect of rowing home. It is the most difficult, potentially most difficult ocean in the world. So, but he wasn't deterred. These guys know what they're taking on, and they've made absolutely every effort to make sure they're fully prepared to go after that challenge. The North Atlantic can be one of the most inhospitable places that you can take a rowing boat. The oceans can be absolutely huge, 40-foot breaking seas. The sea temperature can be down to freezing, so survival time in the water is in minutes, not hours. You can't gamble with Mother Nature. You know, the power out there is incredible. In the click of a finger, she can take it away from you.
The boat had been tested for self-righting ability. Had we the time, we would have loaded it up with all equipment, provisions, and us, and done some capsize trials in New York, fully laden. But sadly, we ran out of time, so we were unable to test it again, fully equipped. We got to a point where we really just wanted to go. It'd been a long build-up, a long track to get there. There was a lot of people to see us off on the pontoon where the boat was moored. People we knew, people we didn't know. There was a lot of people that travelled from the islands. And it was quite emotional, but we were exhausted and we were just ready to go. We just wanted to get on and do it.
Three cheers for the Scilly Boys, hip it! Hip it! Hip it!
It was a release getting in the boat, starting, because we'd been waiting to do it for 2 years. And we got in the boat and we just rowed off. No nerves, no rush of blood, nothing. Just sat down, started rowing.
I remembered that somebody advised me just to enjoy it, look about, take it all in. It's going to be a one-off, so just enjoy it. So I did.
Leaving New York by rowing boat under the Statue of Liberty, hoping, believing that the next land you're going to see is the Isles of Scilly was very surreal, really, for us all.
We did get quite a bit of fog, and it's really weird. It didn't give you a reference point. You know, you could be anywhere.
When fog hits you on a small boat, and it's happening day after day, it does start to affect you, and morale does go down.
It's just made everything damp. Everything you touched was wet. You woke up and it was wet, and you went to sleep and it was wet, and it got in your clothes, and there was no way of drying anything. Even if you had your foul weather kit on, you had to get in the cabin with wet clothes, and that meant your bed was wet. And so that wet could never dry out. One time I did feel like I was back on Scilly, rowing around the islands. I don't know how, but it just felt that it was just on my shoulder, and we were just rowing home. You know, just almost there, just a bit further. One of the key elements of island heritage is gig rowing. Any young man who's competitive and is fit and is active and enjoys being on Scilly and part of Scilly wants to row. Everyone's into it, everyone has rowed, does row or will row, or their children will row. You get 6 of your mates, jump in a boat on a Friday night and race each other. It's a good part of being a local lad on Scilly. It's one thing that everyone identifies with on the islands, and it's one thing that everyone puts their energies into.
Tim has always gone for a challenge. He's always been very positive. He'll have a go at it. The motto around these parts is, you've got one life, live it. You know, and I think that's his view.
This rowing challenge has always been a part of our relationship, almost the third party, really. But there was a part of me that did think, you know, what if he doesn't actually come back?
Chris went to sea with us when he was under a year old. When he told me first he was going to cross the Atlantic, the first thing I said, you've got to be mad. But then I said, OK, if you want to go, good luck. Well, the girls, well, are Chris's life, obviously. That was his wish, to come home to the girls. I'm sure that was it, you know, that kept him going.
When you're out there on the ocean, there's no safe haven. I'd mentally prepared myself pretty much for any scenario. I knew we potentially were going to come across big seas and strong winds.
I'm not usually someone that reads or writes very much, but I decided from day one to write a diary when I was on the boat. I wrote basic things to start off with, like how many miles we'd done, wind direction, what ships we'd seen, how everyone was holding up, any thoughts you had of that day. I thought it'd be really good, just as a good record to what we've done, like look back on years later after the event.
Joby's been around boats all his life, obviously, you know, even with just moving around the islands. He then got a big interest in fishing. You know, people think crossing the channel is a bit of a mission when they get on a ferry, which is like, you know, Dover crosses like a couple of hours. You know, it was a huge undertaking.
Wayne, he cares about people. He will always try and do something that's quite challenging. He just doesn't like anything easy. Head down, straight into it, and that's it. And there's no half-hearted with Wayne.
Here we are. It's about 7 in the morning here. But it was quite weird last night, about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. Me and Joby were rowing, and there was like this weird storm going on, and like thunder and lightning. There weren't any clouds, and then we come to the conclusion that World War III had broken out, and there's little old us in our little rowing boat plodding our way across the Atlantic, completely unaware of what's going on.
Just want to comment on who's clearly the teenager in this crew. Everyone else getting beards going on all right. Me, I got some sort of weird goatee going on. That's what I'm gonna do when I get home. Shave that nonsense off. Yeah, we're all gonna get in there. Look like they've been out at sea for 3 months, 2 months. I'm just gonna look like a numpty, which isn't a real surprise, but we'll find out. What else? Can't really think of anything serious to say. It's just going pretty damn well.
Day started off in really high spirits. It was good visibility. We had quite a fresh northwesterly wind. The mileage the day before was over 70 miles, so we were ready to go. We were delighted. We were covering the ground really fast.
All the miles you're doing are taking you east, which is obviously where we need to go. And so, although we're having fun with the speed and that, we're also making really good progress. And every foot you do is a foot closer to home, which is the way we're all trying to look at it.
It was light and the blue sky, sunshine, not a cloud at all, but it was just quite windy. And so I think it didn't look as rough as it was, and you didn't feel as in danger as probably we were. As you can see, we finally got some westerly breeze and a little bit of help. We're doing some pretty good miles, but it's pretty rough. But it's pretty good fun at the same time. Safety #1 priority, obviously. But yeah, we're covering some good miles, getting some good speeds, and the sun's shining, so all is good.
It got to about 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, though. However, when there was some really quite steep waves picked up, there was starting to get waves breaking across the deck. And despite the fact that we were rowing in our harnesses, the time came when we all decided it was now unsafe. There were seas, waves, big waves breaking across the boat. So at that point we decided to bring the paddles in, lash them down, fasten everything down, and we decided enough was enough. We'll play safe and just get in the cabins.
Tim got his foul weather kit off and sort of squeezed into the cabin. Like I said, it's not a lot of room for one person in there, so me and Tim in there, it was a real tight squeeze.
All right.
All right.
It was quite hot and stuffy, I remember, and quite humid because of the dampness in the air and the dampness in the cabin through our wet clothes and things. So it wasn't brilliant.
There's no circulation of air, so every few minutes we had to open the hatch up between breaking waves and close it again just to get the air, fresh air circulating.
You could hear the waves starting to build, the breaking waves, every so often. Sometimes 5, 6, 7 seconds before they'd either hit you or miss you. But it was quite noisy, almost a bit like a jet engine starting up.
On top of our cabin we had a wind generator, which was obviously spinning quite fast, and it was vibrating through the cabin. But like I said, I can sleep anywhere, so I just pretty much slept through the day. Didn't even think about a potential capsize or anything. We were just there riding it out, waiting for it to pass, move over us.
I remember one thing I was thinking that day was it's Friday the 13th, and Nathan had died on Friday the 13th, 11 months earlier.
Nathan Woodcock, he was the engineer on the lifeboat, youngest in the country. He loved the idea of the row, and he was on it from the start.
Nathan was not only a key member of the crew, but he was a close friend and a great guy.
We had a good race, and I was rowing with Nathan. He was just in front of me. Just turned around and Nathan's in the water over the side of the boat, and then pulled him over and he wasn't breathing.
In July, we lost Nathan, and we were completely devastated.
One of the decisive parts of us getting on and doing the row was Nathan's death, really. We felt we should do it as much in his memory as for ourselves.
We stowed 5 cans of Guinness aboard, and on July 13th we were going to drink a can each and pour a can out of Guinness over the side for him.
Just thinking it would be a very weird coincidence if anything did happen on Friday the 13th this year.
One of the waves that we heard coming, I wouldn't say it was any noisier than the other ones, knocked us completely over. Quite quickly, it sort of went back almost the right way out. It righted itself.
The boat did what it was supposed to, came back upright. So that was it, no more concerns for me. I just wanted to get back to sleep. So that's exactly what I did.
There was a big thump as it hit the boat, but this time the boat kept going over.
I looked across at Tim and I was like, what's going on?
I was dozing at the time and I was just suddenly looked around.
I said, we capsized, and Tim's like, yeah, we've gone over.
This window, the only window in the world we had, was just water.
So I looked out the hatch and it was just like looking into a fish tank. We were completely submerged.
We went from sort of everything being settled to stuff falling out and ending up upside down, a bit disorientated on what was the top of the cabin. The biggest change in my mind was going from this atmosphere, these crashing waves, this howling wind, all this, you could feel it outside, to just this deathly silence. It was really surreal. I think for a minute or two we just sort of dumbstruck, couldn't believe that the boat wasn't rewriting.
We very, very soon realised that the boat wasn't going to self-right. We waited for it to self-right and it didn't.
We knew where everything was, and everything was in its place, and suddenly it was upside down. We couldn't find anything, couldn't see where everything was. It was unrecognisable as a cabin.
We could see all of our belongings just hanging there, like almost motionless. That's when it really sunk in that we were upside down underwater.
In each of the cabins we had a two-way radio, which we eventually found ours. In all the chaos it's quite hard, and we tried calling the bow cabin, Tim and Wayne, many times, but we couldn't get any reply. So we didn't know if they just couldn't find theirs, whether it was in the water, whether they're injured, so we had no idea what was happening.
It was too overwhelming to try and take the situation in.
I was just concerned that he was going to use all the air up in the cabin. Well, I just told Tim, look, you've got to slow your breathing down, bud. You're going to use all the air up.
I had no control of it. It wasn't me. It was automatic. My body was reacting to the situation.
Line reaches to Land's End, including the Isles of Scilly. Northwesterly becoming variable, 3 or less. Then southerly, 3 or 4 later. Showers and occasional rain in west. Land's End, as St David said, including the Bristol Channel.
The coastline here is continuing to take a battering. I'm here at Fourth Call, and there are occasional outbursts of thundery rain. There's been some lightning. We have had winds of...
job of getting the phone out. I said, come on, Tim, you need to get your monkey feet working, because it was pushed right up in the bow.
I clawed around, figured I couldn't, it wasn't enough space to turn around and look for it. So I just felt around my feet and I got it and pulled it up.
Tim puts it together with the aerial, switches it on. I take the phone off to Tim, got Falmouth Coast Guard up, pressed the green button to phone them, and it came back no signal. So the frustration there of having no signal every time you try to dial it, I just can't even describe what it was like being in that situation. If we didn't get hold of them, we were going to drown.
Your instinct is just to sit tight. You're not dead in there, you stay alive, but the water's flooding in, our air's running out. We're thinking the maximum we could last in there is probably somewhere between half an hour and an hour, so you've got to make some real decisive action to get out of there, which is what we had to do.
We had an EPIRB in the cabin, which is a great bit of kit. It's an emergency beacon that the rescue services can locate you and find you. If you press the panic button on an EPIRB, the world stops. We were looking at the button to try and decide, do we, don't we? If we do, then really, that's curtains for the row, everything's over. If we didn't, obviously we're in great, great danger.
I said, what's the best situation that can happen, Chris? And he said, well, if we can get out of the boat, turn it the right way up, dry everything out, then we could carry on. I was like, Chris, the electrics are all going to be knackered. Everything's going to be soaking wet. We're all going to be knackered. I said, this is over. We need to set the EPIRB off. Chris knew that was the answer as well, and we set it off.
Tim remembers that the booster aerial was in the box, pulls the booster aerial out, tried to get as close to sea level as he could in the corner of the boat.
And then suddenly the phone comes into life and he's like, bang, straight onto Falmouth Coast Guard.
Good morning, Falmouth Coast Guard.
Hi, Falmouth, it's Wayne from the rowboat Scilly Boys here.
Hello, Wayne.
We've capsized.
Roger, understand that, Wayne. What's your position? Where are you? When I picked up the call, it was just a lad called Wayne saying he'd capsized, and I thought, ooh, whereabouts are you? And expecting it to be locally in the bay or in the harbour, and everybody was starting to listen by that time. And then we discovered he was 600 miles east of New York. Roger, that's understood. How many persons on board your vessel, Wayne?
There's 4 of us.
The phone call was absolutely key. That was the link between them and us, and it's extremely fortunate they got through to us. Once we established that link, we keep them talking on it then, get all the relative information, then we can take action to help them.
Roger, Wayne, that's understood. Stand by, just stand by.
Hello, Wayne, it's James, the watch manager at the Coast Guard station.
When you hear that they're capsized, their chances initially you feel are quite slim. Bearing in mind where they are, the water temperature, the wind chill factor, the height of the waves. Their situation was dire and the chance of recovery was very, very slim. You say your prayers, really.
If you have your EPIRB, we will know exactly where you are. It's vital that you keep your EPIRB with you.
When you think about those boys, it's unimaginable. To try and put yourself in that position, we're in an ops room, where it's warm, there in seas of 20 feet, extremely cold, very frightened.
Me and Tim are okay, we're up in the bow cabin, but the other 2, I've got no radio contact with them, they're in the aft cabin.
From the time the call was established with Wayne, you drew very close to the lad in a very short space of time, and putting the phone down is like losing your friend, really.
But keep that EPIRB with you, and we're going to get you some help, OK? So good luck, Wayne, and hopefully we'll speak to you soon.
Knowing their circumstance, the conditions they were in, the weather, the sea, is one of the hardest things you can do.
I knew that would be a massive mission in itself, to find us out in millions of square miles of ocean. I knew then, at that moment, that the battle for life basically was about to begin. During all this chaos, there was a beep on the phone, and I looked down, and there was a text message that had come through. It was a message from Tim's girlfriend, Tash, and it said, "Tim, I love you for infinity."
What the words meant, I knew could have only come from her, because it's relevant to me and her.
And I sort of punched down on the floor and I said, "I'm not putting my mum and dad through this. I needed a driving force there."
He's ready to go. And he says, "Ready?" And I said, "Yep." And I was sort of behind him.
I twisted the handle, started pushing the hatch open, the water started flooding in, and Tim was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa." So I pulled the hatch shut and twisted the handles and locked the hatch.
I didn't know what was going to happen. That's why I panicked, because I didn't know how much water was going to come in, how it was going to come in, who was going first, what I was going to do about it, where I was going to go, what was I going to do once I got out there.
I said, "Right, are you ready?" And Tim goes, "Yeah." I said, "Right, we go out and swim up to the right."
I said, "Okay." And then Wayne just hit the door, and I remember pushing him out.
Underneath the water, it was really tranquil, quite peaceful. As I come up to take that gasp of air, it was just welcome to carnage.
I remember breathing as if you're going diving, a real big. And that was it.
We heard Wayne outside of the cabin. He was shouting and screaming. He was shouting, "Tim, Tim." That really unnerved us by the way he was shouting. Desperation that we could hear. We just assumed Tim had been washed away. We thought he was gone.
I just had this nightmare that Tim had been washed off the boat or whatever, and having to tell his family, like his mum, his dad, his brother, his sister, his girlfriend.
That was the turning point, really, when we decided we've got to get out of here and try and find Tim, if need be, and then see where we can go from there.
Don't remember how long I was underwater. I don't know where, what direction, what was going on, what hit me, what didn't hit me. Just came out. You come out, and then suddenly you got this wind and the spray and then the waves, and you just thought, this is as bad as it gets, really.
Lifted ourselves out of the water and grabbed the keel, the bottom of the boat, and tried pulling it back to get the boat upright, which didn't happen at all. I looked up and Tim was sat astride the keel, and then that was the moment I realised that he didn't have anything on, he was naked. It was quite a serious and worrying position to be in, because we knew hypothermia could possibly set in quite quickly.
United States Coast Guard, this is MRCC Falmouth in the United Kingdom. I have some information for you regarding the Scilly Boys. Yes, 4 persons on board.
Before we left the cabin, we sat there with the waterproof gear on. Chris had the EPIRB tied around his neck. I had a waterproof bag with a few bits and pieces in it that were going to help us.
We broke open the door, the water started pouring in, we gave it a good push, and the whole cabin just flooded.
There we were, back from the quiet from underneath the boat into the storm.
I saw Joby and Chris coming around the stern of the boat in their full kit, and I couldn't believe that there was 4 of us.
At that point, Joby decided to announce that he can't actually swim.
I just looked at him and thought, like, he's only 19, like, what position to be in?
We were now in a dire situation. Our only hope was to deploy the life raft, the emergency life raft, which was strapped to the deck of the boat, which by now was underwater.
Good passage to you to Germany. Coast Guard. Hotel, November Hotel 8. This is Falmouth, Coast Guard. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
As a strong swimmer, I took a big lungful of air and swam underneath the boat. I located the life raft. I seen one of the straps and the buckle, so I undone the first strap. I saw the second strap. I was feeling around it, trying to find the other clip. I couldn't find it, and I basically spent all my oxygen that I had in my lungs, so I had to swim back to the surface.
I was right next to Wayne while he was trying to free the life raft. He's diving down underneath the boat over and over again. At some points I'd put my arm on his back and pull him back out if he's under there for a while or if he's starting to move, and the situation with him was really starting to sink in.
He must have been absolutely exhausted.
He just looked suddenly worn out, like he just expended so much energy. Physically, he had changed. He wasn't so focused anymore. I think it was probably the first time he was thinking about himself.
I was basically going to tie us all together so that when the hypothermia did kick in and we drowned, rescue services would hopefully turn up and be able to recover our bodies. So my mum and dad would have somebody to bury and they would have somewhere to go and grieve.
Once I heard that was just a shock. I thought, no. I said, Wayne, no, I'm not having that. I'm going home. I've got 2 little girls waiting for me. I'm going home.
At that moment, something just clicked me out of it, and I thought, right, I'm not going to die. Let's just go out fighting here.
I knew there was 2 knives we had mounted on the boat, so it was decided, as I knew where they were and I bolted them there, perhaps I ought to go and get it.
You ring and you get an answer machine. Think, where do we go from here? What do we do now? No one would like to think their family's lost at sea. We all like to have closure, somewhere where the person can be buried. We can go and visit them. We can get our grief out. But if you're lost at sea, it's the unknowing, not knowing the circumstance and never having it resolved. And that must be going through people's minds, and it's just really horrendous.
Chris passed me the knife. At that point, I knew that I had enough just to make one more go. So I swam underneath the boat, I cut down through the strap in one motion and just pulled away, pulling down towards the seabed basically. And by then I needed some air again. When I got to the surface, took a big breath of air and the raft just exploded, opened up into life.
It was going to a point that had become a real low to another, like, sort of miniature high amongst us all, that this life raft had gone up, and less than a minute I would have thought we were all in the life raft. And that there's a possibility we could get out of this still.
Our chances of survival had increased from maybe lasting another hour in the water to we might be able to last through the night in the raft.
The next problem was that the raft was full of water, so we had to start bailing. This was such a problem for Tim and Wayne, especially because of the heat loss that you can experience. These guys are really, really cold, hypothermic already, and the more water's around them, the colder they're going to get.
Me and Tim huddled together, trying to retain any warmth that we had left in us, and got underneath a blanket.
We tried for hours to get the water out of the raft and bail it and dry it, but it just kept coming in, flooding. Whatever we did, however fast we bailed, it just kept filling up.
It gets smashed by a wave, and the whole life raft would sort of crush into itself. Everyone would fall into the middle of the boat, and every time it roared, you'd all sort of group together and hold on and just think, if this thing capsized, then we haven't got a chance at all.
And we needed to pull in our lanyard, which was attaching us to the boat. And to our horror, that rope had been severed. And it got worse. On this line, where should have been attached a rowing boat, there should also have been a main grab bag. The grab bag contained communication equipment, water, food, rations, survival suits, everything that we needed. We didn't have anything at all.
We're in the middle of the ocean, hundreds of miles from land, no food, no radio. Our fate is in somebody else's hands.
It was a really, really bad situation. We'd even lost the EPIRB somewhere along the line.
That EPIRB was the key to us being rescued.
The water that was in the raft was really cold, and it would, it'd envelop your whole. It'd be anywhere around your body and your legs, and I could, could feel it up the back of your spine, and you'd feel every millimetre that it covered you.
Whilst I was bailing, Wayne was aware that Tim was going downhill quite rapidly.
To keep him alert and gauge his level of consciousness, I asked him some simple sums like 7 times 8 and 6 times table and whatnot, and he fired a few answers back at me, but I probably didn't know the answers myself. Been a thick Cornish boy and all. I was then sort of thinking, I can't take this much more, the coldness. I'm just going to fade away.
I just had this horrible picture in my head of us having got that far, having got into the life raft, having done everything right, but dying of hypothermia and just being picked up, not having been killed by the capsize or anything like that, but from the cold inside the life raft, which would have been horrendous for any family.
We'd received communication from Falmouth Coast Guard that the Scilly Boys were in trouble. Making the phone call that the guys were missing was just something that we didn't think for a second that we'd really have to do it. I remember the phone calls for the rest of my life. The one thing that people wanted was news that they were safe, and of course that's the one thing that we couldn't tell them. Effectively, they were lost at sea.
We'd been in the life raft for about 7 hours, and we was all tucked in beneath the foil blanket, all huddled together, and Joey thought he heard a foghorn.
I said that I'd got to be honest, I didn't think I heard anything, and he was absolutely adamant he heard it.
With everyone else saying they hadn't heard it, it makes you start to think, am I hearing things? Is that just what I want to hear? But
the raft was all over the place. There was waves, spray, wind. It's really horrid, but I continued to keep a good lookout with these claims of the foghorn, and then eventually I saw these two lights on the horizon.
We were thinking, please see us. We're trying to signal you. They've got to see us.
I took the first flare. I pointed it away from the wind direction slightly. I pulled the trigger and it went off.
The whole raft lights up. You can't see what's going on outside, and then we just started to hear this foghorn over and over again.
Every time you picked up on a wave, looking out through the side of the life raft, you could see this ship, and every time you came up a wave, it was getting closer and closer, and you're just thinking, this is a pretty big boat coming towards us now.
We said, I'll never swear again. I'll go to church on Sunday as soon as we get back, and all these things that you started to believe in it for once, and all the time up to it, you couldn't afford that because you didn't want to let yourself down. But suddenly you could think, right, okay, look, we've got a chance at this now.
Suddenly the phone call comes. They've been sighted, but it's not over yet. We've had instances in the past when people are almost there, and you think you've got them, but just hypothermia takes over. The will to live goes out of their body. Their strength goes from their body. They just haven't got the energy to do it. It's not a done deal until they're on there. They're exhausted, they're tired, they're cold, they're disoriented. They most probably haven't eaten, they've been sick. It's just an awful, horrible situation.
I said to everyone, we need to get the hands working because we're probably going to have to climb up something and we can't afford to have one slip because that's it. If you slip, you're in the water, there's no chance of rescue then.
Trying to transfer from a tiny life raft onto a huge cargo oil tanker is going to be a massive challenge.
We had big electric lights shining down on us, and the sea looked different because it had spotlights on it and the wind was blowing the tops of the waves off.
I remember looking up and just couldn't believe how huge it was. It was about 14 or 15 metres to the gunnel of the boat, which is like a 4 or 5 story house.
We're both paddling hard to get closer to the ship.
Wayne was like waist out of it, and he was almost risking too much.
We were bouncing down the side of the ship. We were being forced onto the ship by the wind and the sea. I remember the noise of the waves and the wind hitting us and hitting the ship, but also the scraping of the rubber of the raft.
And we got blown underneath that, like a big belly of the ship at the stern, and we could hear the drone of the engines, and there was a lot of wash around the stern. Then we knew, me and Joby looked at each other, we pretty much simultaneously said, prop. We thought we was going to get sucked through the prop.
There's a massive big propeller, 7 or 8 metres in diameter, weighing many tons. It was the height of a double-decker bus, spinning around. If we make contact with that, it's going to chop us to pieces.
You could see the white water that the propeller was kicking up. And I thought, this could be it. We've come this far to be cut up by the propeller of the ship that's trying to save us, and it was real panic. And me and Wayne just paddled like hell trying to get away from it.
Thought if we did die, there's nothing we can do about it. Anything that was on our control, we had done, and we'd done it well. And this was now a point where we couldn't do anything about it, and it's like, you just sort of rolled a dice. You just thought, what can we do about it?
One of the worries that I had was that if we had perished, if he'd gone into that propeller and died, there was a chance that the family wouldn't even know what had happened.
I just wanted to get away from it. Me and Joby just dug in hard, and anything to survive. Just beast your body as hard as you can just to get out of that situation.
This hugely intense panic then just stopped all of a sudden, and we just came away. And it's like we got spat out the end.
Can't emphasise the skill of the crew of that ship. They were back in alongside us within minutes.
The first rope they threw, Wayne grabbed, and the second one I got, and from that point there was no way we were letting go. If I'd had to, I would have climbed up the rope that I was holding on to get onto that boat.
There was a gangway being lowered, and I said, I've got a gangplank ready. He goes, okay, how far away is it? And I said, like 20 metres.
They walked us back down alongside the ship.
I'm looking through the thing, counted down 15 metres, then they raised up gangplank and I see a rope ladder just whipping around in the sea and in the wind. 15, 10, 5, 2, 1, and then it just appears in the window. So Wayne grabs it.
There's a lot of weight, bearing in mind that the ship was still moving ahead quite fast. So it took a lot of holding on to.
I grabbed hold of it in my right hand and the ship started to roll and it pulled me out of the raft.
And as soon as he got hold of it, obviously we dropped, the ship went up and he got catapulted straight out of the life raft.
It was about a 15-foot climb up the ladder to the gangway, and I got to the top. I was about a metre away from the ship, and I thought to myself, I've come up the wrong side of the ladder, I'm supposed to be around the other side. And with that, the whole gangway just slammed up against the side of the ship. There's just a big clash. I was pretty lucky I didn't go around the other side because I'd probably been cut in half or something. The adrenaline was still pumping. I was walking up the gangway, sort of pulling myself up. I got to the top and just grabbed the first one who I come across and I said, thanks, but I've got 3 mates back down there.
Joby gets to go, and he's close to just going for it. And he's obviously plucked up the courage enough to risk it. I just remember getting on the rope ladder and making it, as strong a grip as my hands would ever do. And so I was climbing up and then suddenly realised I'm flying towards the wall and we just smash into this boat.
I remember saying thank you about 400 times to the people that walked me back inside on the boat, and it was just really relief to get there, but then still that little bit of a worry because I was the second off, that there's 2 more of us to come off, and being on that boat with not all 4 of us would have been really hard.
When I felt I had the chance, I had to reach and lunge with one arm to get hold of the rope ladder. It was very nerve-wracking because, again, this boat was swinging this rope ladder and me away from the side of the ship. It was really, really hairy still. And we had to get it right again. One slip and that would have been curtains.
I just got to the top, put me in the bath, and I remember my legs were really convulsing almost, and then just got out of the bath and we just looked at each other and no one even said anything. We just didn't need to because we looked at each other and you knew there's no point in talking about what just happened because we all knew what had happened. And we just had this, it's just like, and that was it.
Challenge has ended. We're going to hear from some people who are still coming to terms with the shock that after all of the training, after all the work that had been put in, it's all fallen apart. But the good news, they are safe, and the lads were in the water.
The fact that the challenge is off, the shock must be terrible for them.
It's a bit like a dream, really. It doesn't seem to have really happened. It doesn't seem like we've been away at all. It's just, I don't know, just a little dream that we had, or nightmare. She'll probably not look at it. I don't know, I just feel like there's real unfinished business there.
I'm really disappointed we didn't finish it, but there's a lot of people that wouldn't have even tried it, which I've got to try and remember.
Absolutely glad we had a go. But just wasn't to be. People have been really good and supportive, and said that we did well. I don't know what would have happened if we'd actually made it.
You know, you thought he'd turn up, but don't know when. Unbelievable. Just a surreal moment. Just can't really describe it, it's just a weird emotion. Look at that. Unbelievable. At a personal level, I can see the boat now, and I know that it has a beginning and an end, and I can move on with it. We could have been stuck in there, that could have been a coffin. It would have been a morbid, horrible thing. But it was actually the thing that kept us safe in the challenge, and then gave us enough time to survive. I hadn't had a way to understand it until seeing the boat. Makes you appreciate how lucky we were, really. People ask me how I'm feeling, and people ask me if I'd row again. And that's on the quay on St Mary's. That's, you know, that's a flippant answer. It's a throwaway comment. But if I'm standing next to the boat and I'm thinking about it, what we did, someone asks me if I row again, I say, no chance.
To sit there, let life pass you by without taking on a challenge. These guys took on that challenge, and they took it on 100% and more. And they put themselves and their lives on the line to go after that dream. If you don't ever reach out into the unknown, then life hasn't really got that much meaning. One thing that makes us so special is our human spirit, our spirit of adventure, and to go after goals and achieve things. If we didn't do that, then we'd simply be spectators in life.